This is Steve with Rocky Mountain ATV MC, and today I'm going to show you how to clean or replace the fuel injectors on the Polaris RZR Turbo models. If you begin to have issues with your machine, such as no starting, a hard starting, hesitation, popping, backfiring, or even a diagnostic code, chances are it's one of three things. It's a mechanical issue, an electrical issue, or a fuel supply issue. Now, if it's a mechanical issue, it's usually an abnormal sound, and that would lead you in that direction. Electrical issues are a little more black and white in the sense that it either works or it doesn't work. Now, a fuel supply issue can vary. So if you turn your key on, fuel is pumped up to the fuel rail, pressurizing the fuel system. Then when the ECU energizes your fuel injector, it allows fuel to pass through into your engine, causing it to run. Now, this fuel that passes through the fuel injector needs to be very precise and have a specific spray pattern. If this spray pattern varies, then you're going to have a number of different running condition issues. So today I'm going to show you how to clean a fuel injector, and if it won't clean, then we'll go ahead and replace it. And we're going to do that on this 2018 Polaris RZR XP1000 Turbo S. But these procedures will apply to all turbo models. To do this job, you're going to need some basic hand tools, a torque wrench, a cleaner that is safe to use on fuel injectors and O-rings, along with a Motion Pro fuel injector cleaning kit, safety glasses, gloves, and rags, and a copy of your OEM service manual for more information, proper procedures, and specs. First, let's start by disconnecting the battery. We'll remove the driver's side seat to access it, and then remove the cables. Now let's remove the cargo cover. Now we need to remove the fuel supply line. I'm going to go ahead and remove this heat shield so that you can see it better while we remove it, but you don't necessarily have to do this. Now, before we remove the fuel supply line, take a bunch of rags and shove them underneath to catch any fuel that you may lose. Now, be aware that the fuel system is pressurized, and so be very careful when you remove it. Make sure that you're doing it safely. Now, to remove this, we need to push down the safety clip, and then we can slide it right off. Now, it's always a good idea to protect your fuel line from getting any contaminants in it while it's disconnected. If you have a rubber plug, you can go ahead and shove it in there or wrap it up with a rag. Now, to remove our fuel injectors, let's remove our electrical connectors along with the two 8mm bolts that hold the fuel rail to the intake manifold. Now let's remove the fuel rail and the injectors. Now let's remove the clips that hold the injector to the fuel rail. Now again, make sure you use a rag to catch any excess fuel when you're pulling this stuff apart. Now that we've got those removed, let's talk about the Motion Pro fuel injection cleaning tool. Now, the tool comes with the unit that you use to clean, and it'll also come with a pigtail specific to the machine when you order it. Now, you can go through and order a number of different pigtails to fit a number of different machines, so make sure you pick the right one for your machine. Now we need to go ahead and set up the tool. We need to remove this back plate so that we can install a 9-volt battery so that it will work. Now that we've got that installed, let's go ahead and push our red button, make sure the light comes on. Now we know that it's functioning. Now let's take our injectors and go ahead and remove the old O-rings off of both of them. Now, the reason we're removing the old O-rings and replacing them with new ones is that after they've been in the machine for a while, they'll kind of harden up slightly and you'll have a flat surface on the inside and the outside. So when you were to go to reuse it again, it won't seal as well as it did originally, and that's why you'd want to use brand new ones. Now let's start by cleaning the exterior of our fuel injector. Now again, make sure to use a safe cleaner that is suitable for fuel injectors. Now that we've got that cleaned off, there's a few things I want to talk about with fuel injectors. Now on the fuel supply side, there's a screen in there. And what that's going to do is catch any contaminants that come in from the fuel and hopefully screen that out before it enters the nozzle. So essentially, we're going to put it in the tool and force cleaner through the nozzle side to push out any of those contaminants. Then we will flip the injector around and force cleaner through the other side to hopefully clean out all of the tiny holes on the nozzle side. What we want is a really good fine spray. Now we want to install our new O-rings so that we can install it into the tool and it will seal correctly. Now let's take our tool, and you can see that there's a port 1 and a port 2. Now all that means is that there's two different sizes that you can install your injector in. Obviously you want to use the side that the injector will fit. Some injectors have a large and a small, and some are both large or some are both small. This one is both large, so we will only use port 2 today. Now let's remove the red insert knob on port 2. Now there's a small O-ring in there. Now we need to be careful with these. What we're going to do with the O-ring is take our red tube from our cleaner and we're going to slide that O-ring right over top of it, like that. Now let's install the tube into the insert knob. Now what you want is the O-ring to sit flush with the insert knob, and we're going to screw that in. When you tighten that up, it's going to squish that O-ring and create a seal around the tube. Now we'll install it into the housing. Now it just needs a little bit of tension. You don't need to tighten it very much. Now let's remove one of the retaining screws and install our injector. Now because we're going to be spraying cleaner through this side, we want to start and stick the nozzle side into the tool, and then so that it'll push out any contaminants from the fuel supply side. Now if you need to use a little cleaner to get the O-rings wet, it will slide in a lot easier and you're less likely to damage the O-rings. Now let's install the retaining screws. Now be careful, you do not need to tighten these very tight, they just need to be snug. Now let's take our pigtail and we'll go ahead and insert that onto our injector. Now let's install the other side of the pigtail into the tool itself. Now before we hook up our cleaner to the tube, let's go ahead and push the button and listen for the injector to click. Then we know that the injector is actually opening and closing. Now let's connect the cleaner to the tube and go ahead and test it. Now let's disconnect the cleaner and remove our pigtail. Now remove the retaining screw and remove the injector. Now we're going to flip it around and stick the fuel supply side in so that we can clean our nozzle out. Now install the retaining screw. Now make sure it's just snug and make sure that the pigtail connector is in this spot, just so that there's no interference with the tool and the fuel injector. Now we'll install the pigtail and into the tool, test it, and now attach your cleaner to the tube and let's clean our injector. Now you can see the spray pattern here looks kind of like a V. There's a number of different spray patterns. Some are circular, some are more of a stream, but what you really want to look for is the uniformity within itself. Meaning with this V pattern, if one side was spraying a little bit less than the other side, that would probably indicate that it's not clean or it's malfunctioning to some degree and you'd probably want to replace it. This one looks really equal with itself, so we're going to go ahead and reuse this injector. Now let's remove this injector and we'll go ahead and clean the other one. Now it looks like on this one it struggled a little bit at first and then it seemed to clean out a little bit as we sprayed more. Now let's flip it around and clean the nozzle side. Now you can see with this spray pattern that it's not uniform with itself, which that answers the question why we were having some running issues. So we're going to go ahead and replace this injector with a brand new injector and correct our issue. Now let's install the injector that we were able to clean and the new one back into the machine. Now before we install our injectors, let's take some contact cleaner and a rag and clean the ports where the injectors go, along with spraying off the fuel rail as well. Now again, using a little cleaner or a little bit of grease makes the installation a lot easier. Now make sure to install the clips. Now you can see here I've turned the injector around so that you can see this. There's a small indentation on the back side of it and you need to line that up with the clip so that it'll fit right. So you might need to pull the injector out a little bit so that they line up. Okay, now that we have our clips on, let's go ahead and install the fuel rail with the injectors into the intake manifold. And install our two 8mm bolts and torque them to 7 foot-pounds. Now let's go ahead and connect our electrical connectors. Now I like to use dielectric grease in all of my electrical connectors. It's a good preventive measure just to make sure that there's no water that's going to get into them and cause any issues. Now let's remove our rubber plug and install our fuel supply line. Now make sure to remove all the rags you used to catch the fuel from the machine. Now let's reconnect the battery, turn the key on, don't start it, just so that we can check for leaks. You may need to cycle it a few times to make sure that you build enough pressure. No leaks, so we're good to go. Let's go ahead and reinstall our heat shield and our cargo cover. Now let's go ahead and reinstall the seat and start our motor. And that's it. That's all there is to cleaning or replacing the fuel injectors on your Polaris RZR Turbo models. For more parts, apparel, and accessories, come check us out at RockyMountainATVMC.com. And remember, all orders over $75 ship for free. And if you like what you see here, subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is Steve. We'll catch you next time.